Hey, what's going on guys? It's Abyss and welcome back to another video. So I know a lot of people have been asking me recently my opinions on the new PvP stuff that's coming out, and I just kind of want to talk about that a little bit and also talk about PvP in general, why I personally think that the game and PvP is the way that it is in its current form, and just overall just talk about it really. So first things first, the new PvP poll changes that are coming out, I kind of think that I'm happy about them, and a lot of people would probably disagree or agree depending on whatever suits the style of PvP that they do, but I'm just going to try and explain my reasons as to why and just give you guys a little bit of insight about me personally. Alright, so initially when I check out the new PvP stuff that's all coming out, I see a lot of stuff on here that doesn't really apply to me, but I'll still talk about it a little bit anyway. So first things first, there's these new banners, the equipable banners. This here is something that would never really affect me in any way, so I don't really know how to comment on it. I don't really want to like talk about things that I don't really have a lot of knowledge about, even if it's just an opinion. Sure, I guess it's a way to make PvP for certain people a little bit better, so if that's something that was actually really abused, then I'm happy that it was changed. As for stuff like PID, once again, like PID and bounty hunter targets I'll talk about a little bit, but PID, once again, I'm not really like an edge PKer type thing. Like I usually do deep wilderness, and like for me PID would only really change between like, you know, who gets a priority when spec trading or something like that. So to me, PID has never been something that's a huge deal, whereas I know for a lot of people it's a really big one, so I'm happy that if this benefited them in any way, that this was a good change. Now as for bounty hunter, it seems like from what I read, that I'm remembering off the top of my head, the way that the bounty hunter system works currently is it's supposed to not assign you people that are in deep wilderness. So for example, if you're in like level 1, you're not going to get assigned a target that's in like level 40, or you will, but you won't get as harsh of a penalty if you skip them. Now personally, I really don't like the current bounty hunter that we have. It just really feels like edge PKing with emblem drops, and to me that's just like, I don't know, that's not really what bounty hunter was all about to me. Like to me, bounty hunter was kind of like a way to have endgame PvP, and I don't really mean it as like it was super hard, because it really wasn't, but the old bounty hunter worlds pre-OC were like, they were actually like a pretty good money maker. Like if you think about it, you would spend about an hour in the wilderness, you know, to get a target, and eventually over time your little bar or whatever would fill up and you would be assigned a player. Now both players would both really want to kill the other person because the rewards were actually good. It wasn't just like a 50k emblem or a tier 6 or whatever. You had the chance to get anything between 100k loot and up to sometimes over 20 mil if you got like a Vestalong and an ancient stat or something like that. So that there was actually pretty good, especially when there was no free trade. It was actually like a really good money maker, and the whole bounty hunter aspect of this was something that allowed people to chase their target around the wilderness, whether it be in 20 wilderness or in 40 wilderness, whether it's in multi, and people would literally wait for hours to get their target. A lot of people would compromise and do things like DDS, DMs and stuff like that, but I just really liked the way that the old bounty hunter was, because it made it so that there was always people in the wilderness. Like as long as you had a risk on you, you would manage to get a target, and if you did get a target, both people would always want to kill the other person, which made it actually feel like bounty hunter. This one here is more just like, not in the same risk, okay, skip. He's in 50 wild, okay, skip. And because there's no incentive to actually kill the other person, and because there's no loss in skipping somebody, it just really feels nothing like what bounty hunter used to be, and it doesn't really suit the name bounty hunter. It's more like just killing someone with an arrow over their head and getting an item. But yeah, I mean, like it was a big deal before. Like people would go out of their way to like hot worlds and run to the GE and like try and buy stuff because they didn't want to be in the safe zone for too long, or you know, like targets were kind of a big thing. It was like a real matchmaking system where somebody would ultimately profit, you know, usually pretty well over the other person. And when you broke it down, it was actually like a pretty stable moneymaker, because say you went and PK'd for 8 hours, right? You would get anywhere between like 6 and 10 targets. And, you know, if you were, even if you got half of the kills, you would usually make at least a little bit of money, a little bit of profit with a little bit of luck. And to me, that was like, okay, that's actually kind of cool. Like on top of the fact that you're killing somebody, you know, you're able to use PvP skills, whether it be deep wilderness or edge PKing or whatever you guys agree on, or maybe you don't agree and you guys are just, you know, tri-breeding each other with prayer and summoning. That there, in my opinion, was like kind of cool that PKing had like a genuine money maker based off of the skill set of PvP. So when I look at this current system we have, like stuff like this, like changing it so that you can skip people deep wilderness and it's not as penalizing and stuff, it just doesn't really feel like bounty hunter to me. And maybe that's why I've just never really truly been able to enjoy this version of bounty hunter on OSRs. But the old one, that should be brought back. That was awesome. Alright, so the next thing on this list is obviously the looting bag, and obviously I had a couple of quality of life changes just to make it easier to get things in and out of. And once again, small update, but baby steps here. Personally, I really like this. It's not something I use, but I know it'll benefit other people. I get people coming in my stream all the time, Abyss, why don't you use a looting bag? And I'm just like, you know, it's not really worth one inventory space to me. If I'm in 450 mil gear plus an Ellie, the last thing I'm thinking about is being able to save things like a D-skim and stuff when I kill somebody. Like, I want every food possible that I have on me, because that there's like survival is my first priority. But anyways, Teleblock. So it looks like Jagex has finally decided to revert it back to the way it used to be. When I first started Mage Rank PKing, it was probably about 2006. And I don't remember exactly if it was this way, but the way it kind of worked was like if you escaped by logging out, the game kind of recognized that you got away, and they would make it so that your teleport or your teleblock was gone. And after a while, I think they've changed it around a couple of times, but ultimately this is a good update. This one here is a really good update for the health of single PKing and deep wild PKing, because what teams will do right now is they will literally pre-TB all of their members and stay logged out, so that like when they do run into another team, nobody even has the option to TB them. So what I mean by this is, like, I know it's a little bit hard to understand if you're never in the scenario, but think of it like this. If I'm PKing at 40 wilderness, let's say 30 wilderness, let's call it 30 wilderness, and I have a friend TB me, every second that goes by, my TB runs down shorter and shorter. 4 minutes 50 seconds, 4 minutes 49 seconds. So by the time I run into a team or a group of people that might actually have the chance to kill me, my TB is only about 1 minute, you know, maybe 2 minutes. And with a full inventory of supplies, you can almost always tank that. See, if you have, say, 10 brews plus your 99 HP and maybe a couple anglerfish, that's about 800 health total. Now, on top of the 40% reduction that prayer does for damage, it's pretty much impossible to die unless you're like not paying attention or something, because it's almost impossible to do 800 damage over the course of like a minute or two. Even if you hit like all 80s with AGSs, all 40/40s with depots, it would still be almost impossible because of people being able to prey switch and just RNG in general. Like, it's just, it was used as like a defense mechanism rather than an offensive spell for a very long time between teams and people that were PKing deep wilderness, and it made it so that it was very safe to do things like just wander around. So I'm really happy that this one here was changed. I know that certain streamers and stuff like that and other people like to use this to try and avoid teams, but in my opinion, the way that the wilderness is like, the deeper you go, it should be more dangerous. Teams and clans and stuff like that should kind of be expected to be there. That's just the way that RuneScape has always been. When you head, you know, to Mage Bank, you shouldn't be going there expecting to have 1v1 fights. Look at the essence of how PKing has evolved. Like, it has always been clans and teams up at Mage Bank. It has always been clans and teams up at the 44 portal. That's just the way it kind of was. And, you know, there are places to 1v1 fight. You have PvP worlds, you have Edgeville, but and even low wilderness spots like Graveyard Drags and West Dragons and stuff, like those are all fine 1v1 spots. But the deeper you go, you should kind of expect the element of danger, and that's just the way that the game, in my opinion anyway, has always been. So to see something like this be added to the game, mind you, this doesn't benefit me at all. Like, I don't do pre-TBing because I think it's kind of a cheap way to survive, and I like to at least challenge myself. But I could just pre-TB myself all the time, which obviously I didn't. You know, it's a very easy way to avoid dying, especially when you're risking a lot of gear, and I feel like it was abused for months, if not years, and finally something's been done about it. So in my opinion, that's absolutely awesome. Alright, so the next one on this list is the animation delays. Now, this here is something that, like, once again, wasn't really applicable to me. What I personally do is, you know, deep wilderness PKing, and that's always just like tri-breeding and stuff. So animation delays are mostly stuff that people see when they're risk fighting and stuff to like hide them switching weapons and whatnot. Obviously, that's not the way that those things were intended, like things like the home teleport and stuff. So, you know, like, good job Jagex fixing that. Obviously something that needs to be fixed. But now is kind of the big one, which is spec trading. Now, I've never personally seen a problem with this. I've always felt that tanking should have had, or should be, you know, something to do with skill. Like, if you pretty much hit all of the prayers right, you know, if you make sure you don't let your hit points get down to like 30 or something like that, you probably won't die on any TB. There's a lot of people that know all of the escapes and stuff like that. Like, you can just run into hobgoblins, there's ladders, there's cave entrances, and there's stalls to prevent damage. So when something like this comes into the game, spec trading, I've never really seen it as an issue. It's just like, teams are obviously going to be spec trading, because with items like bulwarks and Elysians and stuff like that, it's very, very difficult to kill people nowadays. It's hard enough to even find people in the wilderness these days, but when you're adding on stuff like the bulwark, but like with a bulwark, you can get over 500 defense bonus. You know how hard it is to do damage to 500 defense bonus? Even if you're in max offense bonus, you're still gonna have a very hard time hitting on that with Debo or with melee. So personally, I don't really agree with this update, because I don't think that it was necessary. I feel like it was already very hard to kill people. But this is obviously something that's going to be a big no-no for clans and teams. Clans and teams are going to really dislike this update, but obviously it's going to help a lot of new players and people that are just trying to get into PvP, you know, have a little bit more of a chance. So I'm not totally against it, but I can understand why certain clans and teams would be mad. But all in all, I mean, I feel like it's going to benefit the game more than it's going to hurt the game. So I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I don't like it, but I'm not against it either. And then of course we have a couple last things. The smite effects, Jagex just introduced a way. I don't really know what exactly they're doing for this, but Bandos, God Swords, and Ancient Maces have been something that have kind of changed the way that the multi-meta has been kind of used over the last little while. Basically there's no counterplay to it, and there's no way to really survive. The way that it was before is kind of way they're reverting it back to, where it'll only drain as much hit points as you have. I feel like that there was a pretty fair way to at least have things like, if your entire team in multi is going to have Ancient Maces or something like that, it should be something that is possible to do. You should be able to smite people's +1s using the special effect, but I do think it was kind of a bug, and it was something that, you know, had been abused for a while, that people were just like profiting off of, people that were in, you know, anything over a mil pretty much. So I don't really do multi anymore, and I've led multi clans and stuff like that in the past. It's just not really my thing. I've lost +1s and stuff like Zami God Swords and stuff while PKing with my stream. I didn't really care. I knew the risk bringing it in, but I can understand how, you know, like the average player would probably be demoralized after going to multi with his 20 mil AGS he just spent 3 weeks PVMing for. So I can understand why people would be kind of upset about this, but I think with it being changed, you know, obviously it'll give new players a lot more of a chance. But overall, I mean, to myself personally, I could care less. They can leave it any way they want. It's not really something that I do anymore. As for the last few things, spell casting delays and stuff like that, these are things that obviously needed to be changed a long time ago. I don't know why they weren't, because they've been addressed time and time again, but you know, it's really good that Jagex is finally taking a look at this, and this is kind of what I wanted to talk about. You know, I've been involved in pretty much all of these discussions. I'm in the Discord with all the other content creators and certain clan leaders and stuff, and I really feel that Jagex does deserve some props for this. See, usually everybody wants to just shit on Jagex and just be like, yo, Jagex really messed up, you know, like PvP stuff is just always, you know, not taken into consideration, or it's not looked at as something serious because it's a small player base. But honestly, I gotta hand it to Jagex this time. I feel like they've been super cooperative. I feel like they actually are starting to care a little bit more about the health of PvP, and you know, I don't look at this update as something that's going to fundamentally change the game and make it better. I could have thought of, you know, 100 other things that would have, you know, overall made a bigger effect. But here's what I will say: this is a step forward. This is a step forward for not only PvP, but for the community in general of PvP and for Jagex, because right now the victory, like I said, is not the fact that we got things like TBs or PJ timers or bounty hunter changes, but it's the fact that we made a difference, and as a community we said enough to make Jagex actually listen to us and make a lot of these changes come into the game unpolled. So that's where the victory is. That's what we should be happy about, and we should be able to use this as a baby step to get future updates to pass and potentially have open dialogue with what we need as a community and what we want to have in the game. Another thing that was kind of addressing here is that ragging is going to be not tolerated anymore, and that there is something that is so good for the game. I don't think people really realize how annoying ragging can be. RuneScape is one of the only games that another player can actually seriously grief what you're doing. For me personally, you know, like I stream and do YouTube, so when people rag me, it's kind of like, you know, they're usually just like an attention seeker or whatever. But there are people, you know, that like will really go after people for weeks or months, and they'll follow them every time they either stream, or even just people who aren't streamers, they'll just rag them in PvP worlds. And because there's only one world and only so many places that you can PK, because our community is so small, it's actually quite difficult to get away from people who just are, you know, pretty much doing nothing with their day other than trying to make other people miserable, which is kind of a shitty way to live your life. But you know, some people do that, and to see Jagex taking action against that, because there's no way to combat it right now, that is something that's A1. Very, very happy to see that. So A++ from Abyss Jagex, A++. Alright, so it is this time of the video where I just kind of want to talk about my opinions on PvP going forward, and just, you know, talking about why the game is the way that it is. So personally, for me, when I first started RuneScape in 2003 or 2004, I remember I started the game by, you know, going on a website called Miniklipp. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. I'm sure a lot of you probably found the game on there as well. It was a really popular, like, flash game site at the time. And yeah, I remember clicking a banner on there that said RuneScape, be yourself. And I remember this banner, and I'll even show it in the video because I remember it so clearly that it's just stuck with me over time. So what this means is a little bit deeper than just a banner, but it kind of signified that whatever style of gameplay you like, RuneScape can appease that. That's basically what it meant. If you like skilling, if you like killing monsters, if you like doing quests, if you like doing PvP, it kind of, you know, it's kind of just stuck with me over time. Like, yeah, you know, RuneScape, be yourself. Whatever you enjoy, the game can find a way to satisfy you. And it used to be like that. It truly did. There was endgame content for everything. And the thing that was kind of cool about RuneScape was it was one of the only MMOs that really offered, you know, a good PvP source as endgame content. You see, back in, I don't know, what, 2005, 2006, you know, a lot of people would, you know, they'd max their account out, and, you know, they would probably join a clan, or they would probably end up, you know, as a PKer. And it wasn't really that there was people that did, you know, labeled groups. Like, there wasn't no such thing as like hardcore players, or like high level players, or skillers, or PKers. Like, you know, a peer would typically be seen as a PKer, and a level 3 skiller would typically be seen as a level 3 skiller. But the majority of the high levels, like the 120 accounts, 110 accounts, were pretty much all-rounded players. And I feel like that was a really good way to have the game. Like, nobody really was at each other's throat for their play style. It was more if you're good at what you do. So what I mean by this is, back then, endgame content was sort of different than it is now. Now, endgame content is stuff like raids, yeah, like Theater of Blood, Inferno Cave and stuff, and that's fine on the PVM and skilling side of the game, but there's no endgame content for RuneScape as a PKer. The way that I kind of look at it is, there's nothing. We have pretty much the same game as we did back then. You know, we have the same wilderness, it's the same map, same resources. You know, there's not much benefit to it. Where every side of the game has evolved, we're just kind of left in the dark with, you know, nothing to do other than the same thing that we've done for 20 years. Like, if you think about the wilderness map, we've had the exact same map since RuneScape Classic. You know, there's been a couple caves and stuff like that added, but overall, we've pretty much had the exact same map. And with that, like, the community will only shrink. It'll never get bigger because we're playing in the same game that we had in 2001. So I don't know, I have a couple ideas that could probably fix this, and one of them would obviously be Wilderness 2, and that's something that's really a cool idea, at least I think anyway, and I would love to, you know, kind of talk about that more in another video. I have a couple of, you know, really detailed ideas to make PvP a little bit better overall, but, you know, if this is something you guys would want to hear about, let me know in the comments. I'll definitely make a video about it and stuff like that, and, you know, talk about it a little bit more sometime this week. But overall, I feel like RuneScape doesn't really have that end game content type of feel as a PKer. Like, when in 2005 or 2006, you know, you would, you know, do PVM, but there wasn't much PVM to do. The best moneymaker in the game was ultimately killing somebody for something. Like, you couldn't just do raids, get a Twisted Bow drop, or get an Ancestral Top drop, and then go and buy, like, every item you want. You would literally have to go and do barrows if you wanted a Darrock plate body, or you would have to go and do Calphite Queen if you wanted a D-chain, because there wasn't stuff that you could just go and farm and then sell and buy everything. Like, everything was pretty much its own entity. And because of that, a really good moneymaker was to PK, because you could kill somebody and get a Fury, Whip, full arms, full kills. Like, that was a really good kill. That was actually a very good moneymaker at the time. And that's something that I feel the game is missing right now. As a PvPer and somebody who enjoys PvP, we don't really have that endgame feel anymore. The majority of people who want to make money are literally just going to go and camp raids for a couple weeks and then buy everything they want. Whereas back in the day when, you know, Dagonoth Kings, Calphite Queen, KBD were the only real PVM monsters before God Wars and stuff came out. There was really no high-end items. You couldn't really go and get a 120 mil item and then split it at 60 mil each between you and a buddy until eventually God Wars came out. But even then, like back in Old Wilderness, it was actually quite hard to do, and it was only around for maybe like 3 or 4 months until the Wilderness got removed anyway. But the point I'm trying to get across here is, you know, well, RuneScape in general just kind of evolved, and the PKing scene just never did. It just kind of stayed stagnant. We didn't really receive the proper updates. We didn't really get anything notable to help us evolve the way that the rest of the game did. And this is where like my ideas kind of came in. Like Wilderness 2, I have a really good idea. It's gonna take a little bit more thinking, and I'm gonna need like more time to talk about it, so it's definitely a topic for another video. Also, you know, like a warband slash bounty hunter rework idea I've kind of come up with, but basically just giving people an incentive to actually start PKing again, whether it be high money, high risk, high reward, or just something unique. You know, like PKing needs to have something unique, like that whole be yourself RuneScape banner type thing that I was talking about. It's one of those things that, like, you know, how do I even explain this properly, man? This is gonna be a weird video. It's just me rambling, I know, but what I mean is, like, every aspect of the game should have had its own unique incentive, whether it be PVM, whether it be skilling, whether it be PKing. Everything should have its own unique benefit so that people try everything, and if they don't want to try it, then they don't get the benefit. Like, for example, I personally don't like questing. I only enjoy PvP, but I still need to, you know, dabble into those aspects of the game in order to get the full benefit for the game that the type of gameplay that I like. I personally don't like doing all these things. Like, I don't like getting defenders or doing barbarian assault or, you know, doing raids, but like these are, if you want the items and you want the rewards, you need to do it. And I feel like when it comes to PvP, it's kind of just, we don't want to do it, so we're not going to, so we'll vote no. And I feel like that is where the quality of life aspect needs to come into the game a little bit more. Like, when it comes to PvP, I feel like there are certain things that need to be pushed and not necessarily need to pass a poll, because the overwhelming majority of the game is people that don't like PKing, because PKing hasn't evolved the same way that the rest of the game has. So I just feel personally that there's something here that could be done better, and it's just blatantly being ignored up until recently. We don't know what the future is gonna, you know, withhold, and you know, I'm very happy to see that Jagex is actually taking a moment to, you know, kind of talk with us, converse with us, and just hear our side of things, take our opinions into consideration, and ultimately, you know, give our side of the game a chance. So once again, just want to say thank you to Jagex for, you know, actually taking the time and, you know, effort to do this when we only really have a small player base. I hope that this is not a one-off thing. I hope that this is something that Jagex will continue to do in the future, and I honestly just want to see PvP be better for not just myself, but like everybody. I'm obviously super passionate about PKing. Like you guys know, I've been PKing a very, very, very long time, and there's not many people around from the era that I started PKing in, and I can understand why it's kind of a foreign thing to be this passionate nowadays. But anyways, that's gonna kind of wrap up the video here. I know this was a little bit long. I was rambling a little bit, but I've been meaning to make a video like this for a couple of days now. I've just been kind of putting it off, but I feel like this is the perfect time to talk about this. Remember, if you guys want to hear me talk more about Wilderness 2 and just, like, my ideas for it, it's not going to be something that obviously I talk about and it comes out, but if you guys would like to hear theory crafting on that, leave a comment down below and I'll talk about the couple PvP ideas I have that are like large scale. And yeah, guys, I mean, that's pretty much it. Check out the Twitter, check out the Twitch, Discord, all that good stuff is down below. If you liked the video, if you agree with the stuff I said, feel free to leave a like. If you have any opposing arguments, I'm not like a argumentative person by nature, but like I enjoy a good conversation, a good debate, so feel free to leave, you know, challenge my opinions. Feel free in the comments. I'd love to, like, you know, kind of talk to you guys about it, not in an attacking way, no flaming, none of that stupid stuff. I'm not gonna even waste my time. But if somebody goes, you know, Abyss, I don't agree with you, this is why, blah 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 blah, if it's a reasonable argument, yeah, I mean, I would be down to have a debate. I would even be down to make a video debating a good counter argument to some of the stuff I'm talking about, because I just personally enjoy it. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. Enough rambling from Abyss today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you guys next time, and see you later.